to the Alchemy of Love podcast, where we explore how to weave sacred intimacy and sacred sexuality into your everyday life. We're having juicy, deep conversations. We're mapping out tools and techniques that are accessible and available to each and every human out there who is open to grow, open to learn, and open to heal. Hello, so excited to drop back in with you today. I have been waiting to dive into this topic for such a long time, and I'm really excited to be exploring the divine masculine. This topic has been so central to my healing and my growth, and it is such a deep dive. So I guess I can start off here by just sharing a little bit about my own experience and getting into some personal territory. So when I was first getting into sacred sexual healing, I was working on repatterning a big religious trauma. So on my dad's side, there is a history of trauma with my grandfather being in the war, and he was in a plane that was shot down when he was 17 in World War II. And this caused, deep wound and a lot of irreparable damage. I mean, we know so much more now about trauma and about post-traumatic stress, and there's a lot more available. And it's partly why I'm so passionate about this work, is because when we get into somatics, when we get into the body, when we are able to be with the things that have been repressed and allow ourselves to come back to those parts that got pushed away into the darkness, we can heal so deeply. So I love that about this work. And in my lineage, there was that deep wound. And this led to my grandfather deciding to become a Jehovah's Witness. And he did this because they said they don't go to war, and because he had all this trauma around the war. He was looking for a religion. He was looking for some faith so that he could find healing. And that led to my whole family on my dad's side becoming Jehovah's Witnesses. Eventually, my dad decided in his teens that he couldn't follow that tradition, and he broke free from that, and he lost his family. So that's a quick summary of a very personal history. And where it goes to is that my father had wounds from losing his family and from how he was raised in this crazy fear-driven religion. And I inherited all that. So I really do believe that in our ancestral healing journey, there is a lot of forgiveness required. There's a lot of understanding required. We really do the best we can with what we have. And, my grandfather did that. My father has done that, and I'm doing that. And my part has been to go into what happened to the masculine in a certain specific kind of way where power was shut down. And, this happened for my grandfather when he was in the war. He was really traumatized by what he saw happening around him. And there was a lot of shutdown in himself from seeing the way that power was being abused. And then for my dad growing up in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and also, his traumas of seeing how masculine energy was being expressed and his shutdown in himself. And then that led to me not having a strong connection with certain aspects of his masculine side, and a disconnect and even a fear in me of authority and of the masculine. And then a really deep reclamation journey that I've been on. And I've spent time learning about the masculine, rebuilding healthy masculine energy into my psyche, into my habits, into my personality, and really uncovering what's been there all along that I just haven't had access to. So this was mentioned before in one of the previous episodes. We talked about this idea that we all have a masculine and feminine side. If we understand that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience in this world, then it follows that we have a little bit of everything within us. If we believe that we are part of the divine creation, that we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, that we are experiencing certain elements of oneness with creation at all times because we are of that, then yeah, we are both masculine and feminine. And these two energies are what come together to create life, and they are alive within each and every one of us. So in order for us to be able to be really whole, we have to have a relationship with these different parts of ourselves. And it's so deep and so interesting because we can look at our family patterns, we can look at the cultural patterns around us, we can look at the media, and we can see where our imprinting is coming from. And unfortunately, in our world, the way it is right now, it can be hard to find examples of true, healthy, empowered masculine energy, and the same is true for the feminine. It can be very hard to find true, authentic examples of divine, empowered feminine energy. I think we are on a journey towards those things, and we've got a ways to go. And we've also had to dismantle a lot because there's been models that haven't worked for us. There has been put forth, an idea sometimes of the masculine, what an empowered masculine is, that is not an empowered masculine. So someone who's full of ego, someone who bullies others, someone who puts success and money and progress above all other things, this is not someone who is embodied in their divine masculine energy. And what we see a lack of, especially in our modern Western culture, is the presence of the masculine, the compassion of the masculine, the ability of the masculine to be a witness, to model acceptance. And these are some of the most powerful aspects of the masculine and the most needed aspects of the masculine. And it's really, really sad that these attributes are not recognized, not supported, and not understood, because we all need these parts. We all need them built into our own being in order to be healthy and whole, and we desperately need them in the world around us. So when I was first introduced to this during my training in sacred sexual healing, this was a huge aha moment. When I was looking at this list of healthy masculine attributes, unhealthy masculine attributes, healthy feminine attributes, and unhealthy feminine attributes, I could see so much of myself in it. I could see so much of the world in it. And it was very clear very quickly that a lot of the unhealthy masculine and unhealthy feminine attributes were more prevalent, more dominant in myself and in the world around me. And so then with that awareness and that understanding, then there's a choice to be able to start to look at, well, where do these patterns come from? Like, did I learn them from the shows that I watched on TV? Did I inherit them from my family? Did I learn them in the church? Did I learn them at school? Where did I learn these things? And what do I need? And what do I want? And how can I get there? And there is work required. And I'm going to talk in a little more detail about what that can look like for repatterning our masculine and our feminine. But it really cuts to the core of life and what we are and how we show up in this world and how we experience love within ourselves and around us. So this is a really deep, powerful philosophy to work with. And I'll just circle back to a little bit of that personal story. I am a woman. I identify as a woman. I am born a woman. And I had to spend a lot of time working on my masculine. And I had already been spending some time going into my feminine. I think I'd spent years at that point already doing a lot of shadow work, getting in touch with the emotions that I'd been repressing. I did laughter yoga training, got back in touch with my joy. I was doing something called co-counseling, which was this really amazing movement at the time where you could get together with other people and you were encouraged to share really authentically and let your emotions out and cathart when you needed to cathart. I was doing lots of Osho meditations, so really getting into shaking and ecstatic dance and moving things through the body, all kinds of different things I was steeped in. And it was all amazing and helpful and necessary. But I did not feel safe in the world. I did not feel safe in my own body. And when I started learning about the healthy masculine and about the need to develop presence with oneself, presence with the world, being able to be a witness and being able to be a compassionate witness, and not need to change things, but to first learn how to just be a witness and to be in acceptance, and how to tap into this greater love, this cosmic, divine, loving energy, and to know that as this greater force that is representative of a divine Father. And when I was able to start tapping into that, and to start to build those characteristics within myself, I started to find some peace. I started to not need to fix everything inside of me, around me. I started to have a trust and a faith in the unfolding of life. And this was huge for me. I'm a very sensitive and emotional person. So for me, most of my life going around being this super sensitive, emotional person and not having this connection to the divine masculine and not being able to be present, to witness my own emotions with love and with deep compassion and empathy, and to be feeling disconnected from spirit, and to not feel like I was a loved child of the divine, that was causing so much anxiety in me. I can't even express how difficult that was. And so starting to be able to develop that was huge for me and allowed me to start to support my own feminine energy, balance my own feminine energy. And I may have already talked a little bit about how important containment is for the feminine. We'll definitely talk about that if we haven't yet, and especially for couples out there. There's some great exercises you can do where you can achieve some really beautiful polarity and where women can experience containment. You can see the incredible change that happens very quickly with couples when they begin doing these kinds of exercises. Well, the same exercises, the same polarity that we experience with a partner, we can experience within ourselves. And for years, for me, it was very much a journey that was focused on myself and focused on me learning how to create the safety and the trust and the presence and the compassion and the acceptance that I needed, that my feminine side needed in order to show up in this world in a really healthy way. So I've become extremely passionate about this topic, and I think it is wildly overlooked. And I see so many people talking about the feminine and talking about the goddess, and absolutely, we need that. We need so much more healing for women. We need so much more sisterhood. We need so much more embodiment and reclamation of pleasure and all of it. And I'll just throw in here that if you're interested in that, you should definitely check out the Alchemy of Love app, where we have a beautiful program for women. But with that said, there is such a lack of this kind of conversation for the masculine. So I see a lot of people talking about the beautiful, juicy feminine and how much we need the feminine expression and how much we need her beautiful heart and her earthiness and her wildness, and we need all that. Yes. At the same time, we need the beautiful healing spirit of the masculine. We need the cosmic connection of the masculine, the profound presence of the masculine, the mystic intellect of the masculine. My God, there is so much that is so rich and so deep and so incredible about the masculine. And I had the opportunity to work closely with many men over the course of many years of my work. And I have to say that it's amazing what happens when men are met with receptivity by the feminine, by a feminine who is a teacher, who understands about the balance of these energies, who understands her own boundaries, who can speak up for herself, and who can help men to be able to tap into their divinity, which for a lot of men has been repressed, or there's been trauma there, or they can't find healthy ways to express it within the culture, and they were never taught about the value of their presence, of the expression of their spiritual energy. They were never taught about how to work with their own sacred sexuality. They were never taught about the characteristics of the divine feminine and how to meet her. There's such a lack of teaching. And this you can connect to loss of initiation. There's a huge gap that has been left, especially for men, as we lost, first of all, the relationship between father and son when it became an industrialized society and sons stopped working closely with their fathers and mentoring with their fathers and having that kind of relationship with other men, having that kind of community with other men. As men moved into more industrial roles, it became a completely different social fabric. And as we've lost rites of passage and these kinds of traditions that were once in place, it has been hard for men to be able to move into a space of their mature masculine. Men do not have the same kinds of natural initiations like women do. With women, we have a physical initiation of menstruation that happens in puberty. For women, there's also the possibility of the initiation of childbirth, which is a very deep, physical, mystical initiation that happens. And it is not the same for men. And there used to be technologies and ways where elders would guide men through this process of shedding the layers of their psyche that needed to be shed and stepping into their spiritual self and their roles as protectors and providers, and shedding away childhood. And without that, and without so many things that once existed in the culture that don't exist anymore, a lot of men are lost. And there's such a need for men to have guidance and teaching and community so that they can come into self, come into their empowered expression, and be able to be the healing force in this world that is needed. We need the masculine energy, and we don't have enough of the healthy masculine energy. And without it, it's hard to have the proper balance of the feminine energy. They're meant to have a symbiotic relationship. And so we're meant to cultivate that within ourselves. We're meant to cultivate that within community. We're meant to cultivate that within partnership. It's a beautiful, beautiful dance of creation. And I'm deeply interested in how it moves and how it expresses, and the magic and the healing that comes when we achieve that polarity, that balance, and that expression. So I'm going to move into talking a little bit about how we can cultivate those expressions of healthy masculinity and healthy femininity. And I'll just go first to the masculine, since that's been the main topic here today. And then I'll talk a little bit about the feminine as well. So one of the first things with the masculine, and I think I hit on this already in a previous podcast, is coming into the breath and coming into presence. I've taught a lot of men to work with their breathing, and what I've noticed is that when I'm with a man who anchors into his breath, I can do this exercise that I often teach with hands, where we're sensing energy between our hands, and I can feel that energy so much stronger once a man is really breathing fully, and once his energy body is opening, then I can sense that, and I can feel that energy flowing through me, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's so beautiful. Every single time, it's magic, and I absolutely love it. And it's just a wonderful thing to be able to praise a man for his energy. How often does that happen? We're not really a society that has focused on that, especially not for men. So sometimes I've had really sensitive men come in, and they're so beautiful, and they have such a tenderness and a sweetness about them, and they may struggle even more to find a place in this world, but they have the most beautiful healing energy. And it's so wonderful to acknowledge that and praise that and show them that that has value. So the very first thing with working with our masculine side is starting to cultivate presence and building that as a daily practice. So that means working with the breath and starting to notice the breath entering the body, noticing the exhale, starting to become present to thoughts and to emotions and to sensations in the body, and being able to cultivate being a witness. So being a witness to oneself and being a witness to the world. And that is the beginning of being able to have self-control, which is essential. If we're going to be compassionate, if we're going to anchor safety in the world around us, we have to be able to witness our own self, and we need to be able to witness the world without immediately reacting. So a lot of us are just on autopilot, and as soon as we have a sensation in our body, as soon as we have an emotion, sometimes as soon as we have a thought, we're acting on it, and we don't even know that we're acting on it. We're acting things out very unconsciously because there's so much trauma that is stored in our psyches and in our bodies. A lot of times our reactions be coming from a place of trauma rather than from a response that we may wish to choose that comes from our higher consciousness and that comes from our heart. Our reactions come from trauma. And then that creates a lot of hurt and a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of disconnection in our world. So if we want to anchor in safety, we must first begin with becoming a witness and being able to have non-judgmental witnessing. And that doesn't mean that we don't take action in the world. It doesn't mean that we allow everything and that we just say everything's okay and we have no boundaries and we have no spine. It's the opposite. It's that when we do choose to act, it's that we know how to be able to pause. We know how to be able to witness without judgment first, so that our reactions, our actions are coming from a place of consciousness and actual choice. And hopefully the more that we learn and that we grow, the choices that we make come from a place of a well-developed consciousness, and we can choose to create goodness and fairness and beauty and love and good things in the world around us. We can't do that if we can't be a witness first. So cultivating that is key, and one resource I can recommend, it's so amazing and relates so deeply to everything that I just said, is the work of Marshall Rosenberg. He is the founder of Nonviolent Communication, and there are tons of books and resources that you can find, and it's an entire system of communication, even introspection, that focuses on developing empathy, and that focuses on identifying our needs and our emotions. And we could do an entire podcast on that because it's really incredible. It does take a bit of work, but it is so incredibly worthwhile if you want to develop a more compassionate understanding of yourself and of the world, and really build empathy into your heart and empowerment. If you really dive into it, it's going to challenge you to take ownership for your experience in this world and for what you want. And it's really incredible. So that's one really important aspect of the masculine, is developing that ability to be a compassionate witness, beginning with the breath, starting to develop greater consciousness and greater awareness of self, and then finding those different ways to also start to have a more non-judgmental lens and just really approaching yourself and the world around you in a different way. One other tool that I love to share with people is called a dyad, and we could do an example of it in another podcast, but this is another really great tool that starts to teach you how to be more of a witness and not to react, and to allow other people's experiences to be theirs and to allow yours to be yours, which sounds simple enough, but is very, very difficult for most of us. And in our fast-paced world, it's even more difficult when we don't have time to pause and to reflect, and when our culture doesn't really seem to allow for that. I mean, it doesn't even have opportunities for everyone to have a lot of in-person contact sometimes the way it used to. So much has become texting and online, which is totally different as well. But in a dyad, what happens is that you go back and forth. When I'm teaching it, usually we work with the question, tell me something you want me to know. And one person will say that to another person, and then they'll just pause and simply listen. And the other person will take a moment to see what comes up that wants to be expressed, and then they will just start sharing. And the way the exercise is meant to be done is that you share from your own experience. So you're really using like I statements, if you know what I statements are. So you'd say, I'm going through a crazy time and I'm not sure what's up and what's down right now, and I've been teary-eyed and I'm questioning a lot of things, and I've been distant, and I'm not really sure where all of this is leading, but I'm doing the best I can with it, and that's what's on my mind right now, and that's what I want to share. And so, we'd share something that's personal and alive in you in that moment. And then the person who's listening would just listen. And if there's a pause, they would just say thank you. And that's a really incredible opportunity for the person who is listening to know that they don't have to have an answer. They don't have to respond. They can really just be present with the person in front of them. And they don't have to take on their experience either. They can allow that person's experience to be theirs. Because the next thing that happens is that the person who was answering will say back to the other person, tell me something you want me to know. And that person then gets to say whatever is alive in them. And it might not relate at all to what the other person said, or it might relate. But in that exercise, you're encouraged not to respond. So not to say, oh, well, when you said this, I thought maybe that, you're going through a hard time because of this, this, and this. That's not how the exercise works. The person who responds, who answers the question next, would simply talk about their own experience. Maybe what the other person shared sparked something in them, and they might say, wow, I've also been going through a crazy time, and there's been a few deaths lately, and it has me questioning a lot of things, and I'm really wondering about, this and that and the other thing. But there's no pressure to respond to the other person, to give them advice. There's no interrupting. There's no cross dialogue. And this creates a completely different experience of interacting. It allows for so much more presence. It can create so much connection and so much depth. It's really, really incredible what can happen. So that's a really beautiful way to start learning how to be present in communication. And I found that since being introduced to that, when I communicate with people, I've developed a greater ability than I ever had before to just allow someone to share, to allow them to express, and to know that I don't need to change it. I don't need to fix it. I don't even need to always respond to all of it. I can just be there with them and really listen. And I can also share my own experience, and theirs is valid and mine is valid. Sometimes when we're just present with another person, sometimes when we do nothing, we just be ourselves, that's when the greatest amount of connection and intimacy can occur. So that's the second really powerful exercise I'll share for starting to learn how to anchor into a more divine expression of the masculine and experience the healing that goes along with that. I'll pivot over to the feminine for a minute here. So a few ways that you can anchor in the feminine and start to tap into that. One is also that dyad. That's one of the beautiful things about that exercise, is that when you have that chance to express yourself freely, that is one of the attributes of the healthy feminine, is being able to freely express and creatively express. So a lot of us, we shut down our expression, and we get taught early in life that our expression should only come out in certain ways. And a lot of times our emotions are shut down. So we're told, don't be so loud, don't cry so much, don't be this, don't be that. Sometimes we're punished if we do certain things, if we're too noisy or we're too playful or we're too crazy. And so that can develop a habit and an internalization of feeling that we shouldn't be silly, or we shouldn't be sexy, or we shouldn't be this, that, the other thing. And then we start to censor ourselves, or we start to be a perfectionist, or we start to hide out if that part of ourselves shows up. We just shove it down. And when we want to reclaim our healthy feminine, then there's a learning of letting these parts of ourselves out to play and starting to build a new relationship with our healthy expression of anger, our healthy expression of play, our healthy expression of sensuality, all of it. Allowing it to have room to come out and play and be expressed. And so dyads can also be a wonderful way to support that, where we have a turn to be heard, and all we're hearing from the other person is thank you. Thank you for your expression. Thank you for sharing. Your expression is valuable. You sharing and showing up is valuable. And that is a really incredible way for us to repattern our expression. Another really amazing way to support integration of our healthy feminine is through dance, through learning to be able to move our body and express ourselves through our body for no other reason than just for our own soul, to enjoy the experience of it. So again, there's so much conditioning and so much shutdown for us in life around how we move, how we show up, how we creatively express with our bodies. And I already hit on one of the things that gets anchored in for a lot of people is, don't be sexy, don't be sensual. So a lot of women have received that messaging that it's not okay for them to let that out. And that's a deep dive to get into all of the layers of that in our culture and in our history. But starting to learn to have fun with it, to start to open up our bodies, to start to really play with our own sensual energy, our own creative energy, and allow it to be expressed for our own self, not for anybody else, not for a performance, not to get likes, not to try and hook up with someone, but literally just because it feels good. It feels good to express ourselves, to move our bodies, to let out that beautiful creative energy. And there's so much healing that comes along with that. So if you're interested for the tools that would support feminine repatterning and healing, as I mentioned before, you can find that in the Alchemy of Love app, which you can find in the app stores. And you can tap into so many powerful exercises and teachings there. If you are interested in the masculine side of this, I do hope to add a course in time for men. And I can't say when that's going to happen yet, but you are more than welcome to reach out to me if you are interested in coaching. Then I offer free 30-minute consultations for anyone. I offer online coaching. I do some in-person training as well for body work. And I'd be super happy to talk with you if this really sparked something in you. If you felt a resonance with this topic, then definitely reach out and I'd love to connect. And I hope that you will join us again on another Alchemy of Love podcast as we dive deeper into these topics. I'm going to be interviewing some men and talking more about masculine healing. There's a lot to unravel in this topic, and as I mentioned, I'm super passionate about it. There's not enough focus on this right now, And it's such a huge part of being able to create more love and more healing in our world. So I'm looking forward to the next chapter of it with you all. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful, magical, powerful day. I hope that you got inspired. I hope that some of this was interesting and fun for you. Blessings and blessings and blessings and love, and bye for now.